Hello and welcome to Resolve, an afterplay show. This is an after show for a role-playing game that does not have an actual play, where we tell you all the details of our game so you don't have to listen to it. Hi, I'm Sammie, I'll be your host. My pronouns are she, her, and I play Isiri and Smog, the Hope of the Abyss. Joining me today is my wonderful co-host, Alex.
Hi, I'm Alex. I play the Malboro Juice and his mule companions, the Smogs. All of us use he, him pronouns.
And we are joined today by Zach.
Hi, I'm Zach. I use he, him pronouns, and I play Tao, the draconic dancer who uses they, them pronouns.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Now that we're here, Alex, why don't you tell us about the actual play?
Previously in EFFETE, the captain calls the avatar of Alexander Smog and Isiri together to resolve their differences. Geyser, Isiri, and Tao speak to Aura about using recovered communications technology to spy on the governance before departing for the world of motion. They pass through Tao's world, picking up Juice and seeing the Smog of that world on the way. Tao detects their presence, and Smog uses a portal to get them into the race. WorldCorps discusses tactics for uncovering the WorldCorps. Isiri and Geyser speak with a swamp man, Muck, riding a trout. They direct Muck to Juice to grant his wish. Smog asks the party to fill him in on recent events. As Tao gets ash flying, the terrain magically shifts into a shallow bay, the next camp in sight.
So now that you've heard the actual play, let's do a deep dive into the session. Tara has magic portal powers.
Yeah.
People in Sequence Charter have those portal abilities. I figured Tara could do it as well.
Well, that's more of like the machinery they have, right?
Yeah, that was my assumption, is that that's what was going on with that, was Tara used one of those pieces of tech. It could be that Tara just, got a level up and took Dark Portal and is doing it themselves.
Dan described it differently. Instead of it being like a light orb like it usually is, it was like a dark crackling, and it was more like a disc that you could see through.
Yeah, I think it was difficult to catch, especially if you were not in our previous game, because I think Tara did become the dark after the discarded, yes?
I can't remember.
Which playbook. Yeah, it tracks. And Isiri had a moment where she was like, hey, did you do that? And Tara was like, yeah. But I think it was difficult to catch, especially not having all of the context.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also last session before this, I was just like, open something, I'll leave it ambiguous to Dan. So this would also work for that.
Ooh, opening Tara's access to these abyssal powers.
Yes. I'm so excited. I'm like in my head, because like, I don't think I'll get to a third playbook, but if I do, I know what I want. So I'm like, let me just go ahead and just throw the seeds into the soil here so we can start moving towards that direction.
I know Tao is close to a third playbook because being the connected, unless you manage against it, just propels you through the playbook. That one-to-one link spending, especially if you've already got locked links and you're coming into it.
Yeah, if you don't want to change that much about your character from world to world, if you just want to do like one or two different things, change it up a little bit, but still keep the core of the character, then you don't have that many moves to switch around, so you have so many extra links for free experience.
The Connected is definitely a playbook I struggle to wrap my mind around. I know we play it differently, but that much XP dropping, the shuffling of moves, it would be hard for me personally to keep track of everything.
Yeah, I think I've only switched out 2 or 3 moves going between characters just because there are so many things that I am used to being able to do, like the Tau radar. We've used that so many times. It's been so incredibly useful. I don't want to necessarily switch that out.
Yeah, I can't imagine playing any version of Smog without the Dark Portal at this point. Even if I've switched up how that looks a little bit for some iterations.
Or the Hide in Shadows.
All of these moves are just so solid. Like, so some other ones you'd be like, yeah, I can get rid of this temporarily. If I wanted, I can get it back later. But some of them are mine forever. Don't let go.
Anytime I'm the Connected, obviously I'm going to have the ultimate form because that goes along with the special link move.
Yeah. That would be really silly to get rid of, unless it was for like some real dramatic purpose, which would be good too.
What I think is really funny is I'll probably get rid of Art of Summoning, but I will keep the link that comes with it.
Yeah, I guess you could do that.
That's fair.
Every session, you get rid of it, and then the next session you take it again. So you just get all of these locked links with these different communities of different animals.
The connected really is for the min-maxers, and that is the min-maxiest way to play it. Keep getting those moves that give you links and swapping them off for another one that gives you a link.
Or you take that one move from the anachronism and get like 7 time validators.
Oh my god.
Running after you.
We really don't need that.
We definitely do. We need to know what the time validators are.
Oh. I don't. I'm content with not knowing.
It was the governance all along.
No!
Whoa. They're just trying to keep the timeline straight.
The timeline is gay and they can't stop it.
You can't do
That
it.
sounds like Smog's motto.
Timeline is gay. Let me open my calendar app.
Tara, at the start here, drags these two into the same room. I joke about Smog being in his undies, which we decide are heart boxers.
Classic.
And she gives him a second to dress.
This was fun. I like being forced into direct confrontation, and especially when it's facilitated by an NPC. It's good to have a middling force.
I did not expect anything that came out of Tara's mouth here. I understand that Tara and Smog's relationship, as far as we've seen it, has mostly been like in groups, and then they've been receiving information about each other. So there's not a good key of how either of them have felt about each other until these last couple sessions.
How do you feel about that?
It's difficult. I lost my Tara link from before because I'd never locked it, and now it is locked. We've had 2 back-to-back sessions where Smog has had to lay everything forward in front of Tara. This is the current situation, and this is what I want to do. I don't think it's all settled yet, but it's definitely a much more solidified relationship now that it's finally been locked.
I just find it kind of funny that our party drama got so bad that NPC noticed and was like, hey, you guys aren't going to be able to do your job, so this is therapy time right now. Talk your problems out.
One of the Marauders just had a front row seat to it. Probably had the gumption to actually say something to them instead of anyone else in their orbit.
Yeah. Plus, I imagine, even though we're allowed to do what we want in Sequence Charter, it would not shock me if on some level Tara is keeping tabs on our actions and activities. Words of our disputes would easily get back.
But she doesn't seem to get directly involved that often. She's relied on the self-governance to take care of things with Geyser or other people in Sequence Charter. This has been an issue long enough that she felt the need to step in.
Plus, Isiri and Smog are both packing heat when it comes to, like, things that could happen to the people around them if it got to, like, Omega mode bad. So I think it was a wise decision to come in and be like, let's stop the 2 gods from yelling at each other, please, thank you.
Yeah, that's pretty fair.
I guess what surprised me most of all is, well, Isiri saying, like, it's your call as to what's supposed to be right and wrong here, and Tara saying, if it's my call, Smog's actions are justified, at least in what I've seen so far. Maybe things have not been completely well explained, but it's weird to see Tara state that so firmly.
At least outwardly, Smog's actions seem to have been nothing but helpful towards the people of Sequence Charter. Warning them of what's coming. He's doing a bunch of time travel to make sure that they're all set up as best as they can be to prepare for the coming threat. Alex using that prophecy doesn't necessarily mean that Smog was calling the governance.
Right.
Yeah.
Tara also has a buddy from her original campaign who is an anachronism in a different way, who's been, like, spaghettified through time. So she might be a little more used to time shenanigans than anyone else.
That's true. Isiri's interpreting what Tara said here as, well, a little dejected that she sided with Smog. Gut reaction. On the other hand, she's interpreting that this entire ordeal was humanity summoning the Abyss / her by proxy to help them because they were out of commission for this length of time and they feel really bad about it. If this is exactly the last remnants of Earth that remain, as far as anyone knows, then it's her prerogative to do what they wish here. So if easing this conflict between party members and helping humanity in the same way are in alignment, then that's okay with her. Isiri is going to be cautiously optimistic, but she sees at least Avatar of Alexander Smog in a different light, and by proxy the rest of them.
It's not just that she has to say. She says that the two of them can act as a balancing force for each other. Like, it's good to have a difference of opinion so that you can settle on something that appeases everyone.
Yeah, that's true.
Someone suggesting pulling out the big guns and someone more of a voice of moderation.
It's also funny, too, because this version of Smog, in terms of the Smogs we'll see, is the voice of moderation, is not out here doing the big things, is leaving that to the other versions of himself. But
on the other hand, the series, like, if you are like a deity-like being, you should know better. And that's the sticking point. I have to ask what you meant by Smog says, "This is my time."
It's a theme of being a cross between the anachronism and the connected. It's like something I'm trying to hone in on with that transition is these Smogs are where they are for a reason. They're in a particular place. They're not just there to have fun time shenanigans. Like, these are particular times that are going to make Smog useful in these worlds. And this version of Smog, the Avatar of Alexander, is supposed to go home. This is when he is, and no other version of Smog is supposed to be at that time. Smog also has contradictions, and we can talk about that a little bit later because the other version of Smog gets into it about the Tao's World Smog sticking around.
Yeah, that's a good point. At the end of this conversation, once things even out a little bit, Isiri asks Smog, "Are you still able to give counsel? Other than, like, the taste for bloodshed and, like, the altered timelines, even for things not relating to, I guess, the macro plot here, why is this version of Smog so hesitant to be there giving advice?"
It's important for the previous versions of him, for their development, to be engaged with what's going on in the party. He doesn't want to steal any moments that are meant for an earlier version of himself. Those versions also have experiences with a future of Sequence Charter and Chrysalis that might be valuable to the rest of the party. That's why he's also like, don't think that the versions of Smog that I'm sending you are completely unwise, are like the version of me that left you.
That's fair. So on a lighter note, Tara takes Isiri back to the World Travel Lab where the rest of the party sans pony because Carolyn wasn't able to join us this time, so no pony shenanigans this time. Everyone else is in the World Travel Lab getting ready to head back to the World of Motion, and Tara's like, "Alright, I gotta go. See ya." Isiri's like, "Wait, was that you? If so, I'm so proud of you." I'm obsessed. Tara's just like, even an old dog can do old tricks. That's so cheeky. I love that.
That is great.
Isiri asks Tara to send a message to Powder that she's okay and she just had to take care of some business. Tara goes off to do captainly business. Geyser and Tao are hanging out in the World Travel Lab, and we get caught up on everything since everyone's been a little bit separated here for a minute.
Geyser is very apologetic for getting Isiri hurt, potentially being the cause of the governance attack, she thinks. Really showing that this new form of Geyser is very different from original Geyser.
I don't know what to make of new Geyser yet. I'm sure Isiri is fine. I know that. Isiri is very pleased and very proud. But me as a player, I'm like, I don't know where D is going with this yet. Like, I'm very excited, don't get me wrong, but I haven't quite caught their demeanor yet, other than being a little bit more logical and sympathetic to things.
I'm wondering if this is sort of a sign of Geyser overcorrecting from overly silly to overly serious, and she's eventually going to find that middle ground balance, because she is still a clown.
That's true.
I think there's a lot of comedy to be found in, like, trying to learn something, though, making assumptions and figuring out you're wrong. I think there can be, like, a little bit of comedy in the scientific process, if you let there be.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I also wonder if Geyser's going to hinge more into, like, a straight man role.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking, too. Going from the funny guy to the straight man could be an interesting way to go there.
Straight man solutions clown. Going from trying to become the shield wife to becoming the man who is harassed by problems.
Man trying to solve all the problems they caused.
Geyser's just going to become the entire meme at some point. It's Geyser fighting Geyser and protecting Geyser.
You're so right. We've come full circle.
Geyser is now the Navy SEAL crouching over the child.
Yes.
Taking all of the problems.
Although, even though Geyser has changed, I love that the tenacity for violence is still there. Very convictedly saying, I will destroy them if they show up again.
She does need to appease the dice.
The dice spot is still out for blood.
Only for D, though.
Yeah.
Cannot get a good roll unless she is rolling for death.
Dice spot is like, these fuckers need to catch these gloved clown hands.
Guys are still concerned about the risk of the governance watching us. So far, they haven't had that same vibe that the powers that be are watching over us, but they want to make sure, so they go talk to Aura about it, who's still working on this communication device. I think it's interesting that now is the time Geyser is reaching out for connections to people, like, what's your contact? How do I reach you? How am I going to be able to get to you from otherworldly stuff?
I understand that as part of the change. It seems like there is a proximity to her feeding before, needing to be around people to catch their vibes. Geyser could not be an internet troll. And like now she understands the need for communication because she has other goals that don't always align with being in the same room with someone all the time.
This Geyser is less of a lone wolf, because Geyser would often go off on her own, not really care about keeping in contact with the rest of the group. This new Geyser seems very concerned with the well-being of everyone else around, and probably going to try to make up for that in some ways, with like being more in touch.
That feels true for a lot of our shifts, especially the more dramatic like playbook changes seem to be focused around not just the character's growth, but meeting the needs of the party and the community we're trying to serve.
Yeah, Geyser's always had that protective instinct, particularly for Jilly. So it makes sense that in her absence, it's spreading out to others now.
I do think it's funny that this conversation for a little bit becomes like a wish list of what to do with the communication stuff after it's ready, and we're just like, I'm working on it.
Poor Aura. Aura has so many things to keep up with.
When I started going in saying, like, oh, we could do this with the communication system, what I was kind of angling at was, hey, GM, why don't you let me make a roll for this now to fix it? And I feel like Dan wanted this to be more of a long-term thing and sort of shut that down with Aura saying, no, I still need to work on this.
Something I would love to see in the second edition of this game are clocks for completing projects long-term.
Something like Blades in the Dark.
Like Blades in the Dark, like Citizen Sleeper. I think that mechanic could be really helpful for a long version of this game, although I think maybe the first edition of this game doesn't think you'll play a game as long as we have.
Yeah, I feel like we're an outlier. And the good news is we're testing it to the full extent of its capacities. So that's fun. I'm not going to put too much flack on Aura because they're overstressed and distracted mentally.
Yeah, with everything going on with Alraun.
I'm sure they'll get around to turning this into a spy device.
You were so right. It's going to be good if we can do some like counter spy, some spy on spy activities.
Maybe get a double agent in there somewhere.
I would love that. I don't know who that would be.
We have so many robots we could use for that purpose.
Oh no, not Hound 5.
Not now, obviously, but at some point we do need to check on Hound 5 because he was kind of dismantled after Isiri had her moment there. So it's been a minute since we've checked on him.
That's also something that is slightly Smog's fault for being like, hey, that robot acted the fuck up, get it out of here.
Yeah! Sarah wasn't happy about that either.
Circling back to what you're saying about Tao's help, I think that will at least flavor when we come back what's done, because we've sort of generally got this vibe that this Tao, now that we're in wartime, might be helping out with the World Travel Lab, but more specifically working with these issues that we're asking of Aura here. So I think that's a good place to leave this version of Tao off on.
I think it's a good position for them to be a collaborator in this situation, especially because they have access to their own world that they've traveled through. It's definitely going to give Aura good ideas to head in the right direction.
Yeah, that's kind of why I had this Tau sticking around with the World Travel Lab and not going up with Smog to the strategy meetings and whatnot. I figure Tau's not really in it for conflict, but can definitely help out with sharing things they know.
You know, there's a detail here that I skirted over, mostly because getting back to the party here, upon coming back from the Smog meeting, is Isiri sees 6 devices being welded to the ceilings from people on scaffolding, and I don't think Isiri would have asked anything about that. She's still confused why you guys are making sand have feelings, but what are those? What do we think those are?
I have a theory that those are the propulsion devices that were on the underside of the flying crawler that we brought back, the Harvestman. Because it had like those propulsion boosters instead of just normal legs.
I think I have 3 different thoughts. They could be starting to construct, because we're closing in towards the end, portals back home for everyone.
Right.
This could be an attempt to create a larger portal, which Aura said that they were working on in order to do that. So sort of 2 variations on the same thing. Or it could be something that they need to get set up to directly connect to each of the communications devices we will soon have.
Interesting.
All very plausible.
Now that you say it, I am definitely leaning towards the first one, considering this is inside the World Travel Lab.
So we do a very quick hop skip through Tau's world. I just sort of say in passing, Juice and the Smog from Tau's world are hanging out there, so that Juice can come along and not have to pop out of the World of the Lost into Sequence Charter and then go through the portal to the World of Motion.
Upon arriving back into the World of Motion, Smog had the wherewithal to leave a note saying that we booked it, we're continuing the race, and Juice can't talk. And I don't know if Juice can read. I don't
believe so.
That's a good question.
Yeah, and then Isiri sure as hell can't read, so it was up to Geyser to help guide that situation.
We know that Geyser can read!
Yay!
I mean, we've done that before.
We know that Pony could probably operate the tablet well enough to take a picture and use the text to voice.
Pony can read, though, right?
No.
No?
They recognize, like, general multi-use pictograms and stuff, but not language.
We didn't really talk about it, but probably when that translator was working, it was reading things out to her.
Right. Or just translating it into emojis.
Oh my god. Penis.
Horse emojis.
Horse emojis?
They're all horse emojis.
Emojis, oh no. That's when you put too many emojis on the screen.
More G's, please. But Smog didn't say what direction they were leaving in, so it was up to Isiri to sniff them out in traditional shark fashion. And we've learned that this version of Smog smells like cinnamon and lavender perfume.
This version of Tau.
Or Tau, rather. My apologies.
This version of Smog smells like, I don't know, iron and bird shit.
That's depressing. That's gross.
Also, I guess whatever different paints might be made of, probably other sort of metallic scents sometimes.
Oil.
I was thinking oil, but like, we'll get into it, what this means later, but his project has been sitting for a while.
Isiri just smells like salt water. I don't want to know what Juice smells like on a regular basis, so I think we're good there.
The worst.
Awful. We rush off in that direction with no chance of catching up. It's a good thing Tau is pinging us all the time, so we can get warped back.
Got that Tau radar constantly going.
It was all a part of the plan. We were going to port you back from the start.
Although, one thing we kind of skipped over here is that as Isiri was tracking down which direction Tau went, she noticed something was weird with the directions in general.
Right. So Isiri's a shark, and a lot of sharks have electromagnetic senses. We've theorized that they can sense geomagnetic positioning, and that's how they do their long migration. So I was like, yeah, that's cool. Isiri can have that. New shark perk added. But upon looking into everything going on here, she's realized that the poles have appeared to have swapped, which does happen on planets, just not very regularly.
I don't think it was even necessarily they swapped, it's just they were different.
Shifted, yeah.
something was completely wrong with your magnetic sense of direction.
Ooh, the magnets are fucky wucky.
Magnets, how do they work?
Geyser should be the one saying that.
You're right. You're so right. She also notices that the Manticore has also made tracks following the rest of the racers, which doesn't shock me.
I have a wild theory that the Manticore could be like a D&D style druid where they can't fucking talk when they're in their wild shape form. So they would have a motivation for being in the race, like being able to get a wish, because how else would a wild beast know how to do that? But then not be able to speak to the party without surrendering their form.
Interesting.
I think it would be fun if they were just a wild Manticore has entered the race.
I see things going fast and I must follow them.
Predatory animal. Good for you. But on the flip side, what if they're protecting the butterfly?
Ooh.
And they're just sort of watching and seeing how things are going? Because so far it hasn't shown up yet, as far as we know, other than to like a couple people that started this whole shebang. We haven't seen the Manticore and the butterfly in the same place yet.
We also haven't seen the butterfly.
That's true. That's also true. Well, we shall see it at some point, hopefully. The thing I can't shake is, obviously there's something fucky going on with the dirt. Because Isiri has that sense, and then we talked up in the overview that the land turned into a bay all of a sudden at the very end. So there's something going on with the stability of the environment. So I don't know if this was just a thing that has always been, or if this is as a result and is rather recent. There's a lot of unanswered questions here.
This also feels like it goes along with Dan saying, like, fucking everything is here. This is a huge mishmash. It sits well with Shrek, that is a fantasy world that has contemporary pop culture. So that might be something inherent to this world.
I don't know. Isiri just kind of wants to go down.
We could have one of us keep an eye out for the Manticore on the racetrack. Now that especially Tao is flying above it, but we'll get to that. So before we catch up with Smog and Tao, we had a small discussion about like what's going on, what would they be racing in. Zach, you were asking about having some sort of machinery again, because this is an engineer Smog, and it's like, okay, he's been working on an airship. He did an apparition move to try to construct it from his memory, but he needs something from another world. So he's been considering scrapping part of rig for this machine, but just not sure if he wants to give it up. And that's why we're just using Ash to fly for now, the black chocobo from last time.
Yeah, we saw OG Smog with rig, saw Avatar Smog without rig. Maybe this is where it goes.
That's a big thing to give up, too. But at the same time, it did directly hurt you.
It will in the future, supposedly.
Who knows? The timelines are fucked. Thanks, Smog.
This is the version of Smog that is most like finding the connections to what we've already seen. And I think the last one will be sort of, but not as much as this one. This one like settles other things into place, and then we just get little turn of the crystal with the final Smog we will see. But we can talk more about that near the end when we have a different conversation.
Oh.
So yeah, porting in the party was part of the plan. Smog and Tao do that, get them on the racetrack.
We have now a Moogle and a Dragonborn riding a chocobo, a clown riding a Marlboro, and a shark swimming through a bubble of water, all racing alongside each other.
What a majestic sight.
And honestly, you probably fit right the fuck in.
Yeah, for sure. Especially considering where Isiri and Geyser go talk to someone next.
Isiri's like, alright, I'm bored. We have this discussion basically catching the party up on everything we've talked about, like we already know. And then Isiri's like, well, I'm bored. I'm going to go bother people and talk to the racers and see if I can find more information. And Dan was like, literally anything, make it up and they'll be in the race here because I don't have anything planned. So I was like, can't do Orthan and Patrick. I expect to see them when we go into the World of Lost. We did make them horribly lost. They're not here. I'm assuming that Sir Mizzle and Glorymane are doing whatever with Pony, and we will catch up with them later.
We did see them in the race.
At some point, but there was a time jump. So I was like, we haven't met anyone else besides the Manticore, and I was like, they don't really talk, so they're probably not here anyway. So, Swamp Thing. Although I'm not sure why it's riding a trout, but I'm not mad about it.
Gotta get around somehow.
That's true. And also, this trout doesn't need the same water bubble as Isiri does. It's just swimming in the air.
Yeah, sky trout.
Sky trout. Skyward trout.
I love Pokemon battles with fish just hanging out in midair. Why don't they ever do that in the anime?
Because they're boring.
No, the fish just gotta flop around. Except this one. This one's a cool fish.
Unfortunately, Isiri annoys the hell out of this guy. Which is pretty typical for her. But this is pretty typical. This is how most of Isiri's interactions on her homeworld goes, because she's kind of annoying. Baby. The Swamp Thing is like, alright, I'm trying to focus on the race. Can you go away now? And Isiri's just like, no, I'm going to keep talking to you. They have a bit of back and forth. Eventually, Geyser is the one, Geyser who is riding on Isiri's back, which is weird. But, like, it makes sense. I'll allow it for the purposes of harassing other racers. But they eventually get to the crux of talking back and forth, and this Swamp Thing wants to use the butterfly to wish for the smelliest thing ever. That's what they want to experience, and that's what their life's about.
I think Dan couldn't imagine something immediately, so he's like pitching it back to us, and Dee said something about trapping methane, right? And that's what led to this.
Mm-hmm. That seems plausible. I mean, it is a swamp thing. There's some weird-ass smells in a swamp. Don't know if you've ever been to one, but they're gross.
Yeah.
Affectionate.
Shrek lives there.
That's true.
Right. When you said Swamp Thing, the first thing I did was toss in a Shrek gif to the chat.
Fool to me, Universal Movie Monster. I was really referencing Shrek.
He is a Swamp Thing.
He is a Swamp Thing.
Isiri immediately sends them off to Juice. Smog is very surprised that anyone would want to be hit with the bad breath, but it's just like, all right, let her rip. Juice has been rolling face forward because he's hungry and just taking chomps out of the ground. So stops chomping out of the ground and starts puffing up little bits of bad breath along the way, which miniaturize the Swamp Thing muck and his trapped.
So we don't really know what will happen to them.
Yeah, they kind of fell behind, seem to be out of the race at this point.
But I hope their wish has been fulfilled, if nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
A little unhinged, but that's okay. This does cause something to happen in the butterflies. Isiri notices their motion and activities are slightly different, but it's not distinct enough, and Isiri is definitely not the authority on butterfly activity to know what that difference is. She just gets that vibe.
Yeah, it seems to cause something to happen, because Isiri did notice the butterfly stirring soon after this, but we've yet to really confirm one way or the other, so it'll be interesting.
So start feeling the rumblings again. Might be another earthquake coming.
Well, I have a feeling that might be related to
everything shifting.
Yeah, the world shifting around.
Mm-hmm.
I like Smog being upset at the possibility of the core of this world being at the world's core.
Yes, it's a larger discussion about how the party thinks they might approach collecting the world core here.
I don't know, a series apropos of nothing, really. It's just like, maybe we should grant everyone else's wishes. Smiley face.
Yeah, if that is related to the butterflies, that seems like it could be a good idea.
And, if nothing else, if everyone else's wishes are granted, they won't be racing anymore, so...
True.
We also sort of have the other end of that idea. It's like, maybe we need to get more people to race. Maybe we need to get people more excited about this. We've tended to gather the WorldCorps around some sort of mass of excitement. Smog also eventually proposes, maybe we need to figure out what we want and work towards that, because we're trying to bridge things here. We have to participate as well.
Yeah, that one kind of, not, like, rendered me asunder. That's very dramatic. But,
caught you off guard?
Yeah, that's the normal human way to say that. Because I was like, what is Siri sure what she wants right now? And the answer is no. And also, what does a Siri want? I know that. I don't know if a Siri's come to, like, complete terms with the scale of her needs and wants here. But that's why she kind of, like, skirted around it.
The answer is powder.
She already got that. She just has to be home long enough to hang out.
That was me also preparing for a conversation I did not think we would also have at the end of the session, but also setting up the conversation for Pony. checking in with Geyser, but I do feel like we have, as a group, a better idea of what Tau and Isiri, and even to an extent Athenos, are moving towards right now. I want to know about the other two characters and players. I need to try to put the timeline with Smog in perspective, and that conversation helps with that.
Yes, absolutely. I just want to pick Dee and Carolyn's mind, see what their thoughts are here. If their own wish fulfillment is part of this, then that could be very interesting.
That's also why Smog checks in directly with Geyser, like seeing the change, and is like, oh, hey, I recognize this version of you. Did you get what you want? And Geyser gives a very solid maybe that Smog seems happy with. I am interested to continue this conversation with Pony when we come back, in addition to something else I have planned with Pony.
Excellent. I'm excited. But I like how our little conversation about wishes, or maybe helping people, or what's going on here, immediately turns into deep philosophical quandary with Smog about, hey, did I get explodinated when I cast Set a Flare? Is that still in the time structure?
And it's not. Geyser goes into detail because she saw everything. There's no one else here who directly saw that event.
Right.
Explains like it was big, it was powerful, but you also stayed out around and you helped keep up the moon. And Smog's like, that's not how that's supposed to happen. I'm supposed to get really hurt and get, taken out because I need healing. What the fuck? What's going on?
Yeah, and the series, I just spoke with Alexander. The timelines are not the same from their perspective.
Yeah, I wanted to make clear a bridge from this Smog to the Smog and Tau's world, and this was the conversation to do it. And we'll hopefully tie those things up in the next session, because Smog just leaves off. I need to talk to Pony, and I know what I want to do.
I just know a lot of that's going to hinge on what Pony does in their little escapade.
God, I feel like next session could just be like Pony getting everything she wants, which is great because Carolyn is primed to make a playbook change for Pony.
Absolutely.
Oh, right. Yeah, she's the only one that hasn't changed playbooks yet.
Just that meme where we edit out gays and it's give the Pony everything she wants.
You know what? She deserves it.
Yeah.
Yeah, she does.
Pony's been the most steady out of everyone here. But yeah, as we wrap up that conversation, we see the tents of the way station in the distance, and then the earth starts to rumble yet again. And instead of just being a standard earthquake like we experienced upon entering, the soil shifts and falls away, and then water slushes in out of nowhere. Hilly terrain turns into more rough cliffs, and we're met with a large bay before us, and all of the tents have been lifted onto rafts and are floating in the sea.
And Tau gets a great view of this, now flying on Ash.
Yeah, use Tau's wings and Chocobo's wings together to get a bit of air over this as the change was happening.
All right, I think this might have actually happened earlier, but Smog also gets a good view of the people at the front of the pack who seem to be on some sort of sci-fi motorcycles that are not spitting out diesel, who seem to be a motley crew. No one quite looks the same, but they are all on the same type of vehicle.
Yeah, we definitely have competition in this race. It's just a matter of who do we gotta talk to get what we need. And I'm sure at this way station we'll probably interact with some people.
Yeah, for sure. Gonna have a bit more downtime to potentially talk to these people when we're not mid-race, though swimming over to the trout did end up being very fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be fun to see that. And also potentially going to the world of the lost from here when we get to the end of the day.
The world of the lost could be very weird, because if the world is shifting as much, and we don't know if there's a pattern to the shifting or how this really operates, but it could be just constantly changing zones, like the previous one that we were just in is there. It's just been lost.
And I'm sure people lose things when the world is constantly changing under them, so it's going to just be jam-packed full of junk.
Again, I fully expect to see Orphan and Patrick there.
I'm trying to think of something that crosses over with the concept of wishes and racing and motion. I feel like maybe Shooting Stars could be there.
Ah, Kirby Dream Racer.
Yeah.
The crystal shards are there.
You're right. And that's because of Alexander.
Oh my god.
World of the Lost is going to be interesting. I'm also interested to see if any of like the race's officials will talk to us, because we kind of skirted them, and like that wasn't an issue because of the governance problem. But I know Tao was very wary of the officials. Wonder if there's ramifications for not filling out the proper paperwork.
We have a map, and the map's supposed to get us into the race. Tao was less being wary of, oh, I don't want them to catch us, and more like seeing who could fill us in on more information. But we didn't quite get around to that before the governance attacked.
Yeah, I remember where I was when the governance attacked.
No.
What was something you would have done differently if you could?
So this is something I've been thinking about, less done differently in just this session, but more in the past couple sessions. After seeing how fun and juicy the party drama has been getting, I kind of wish Tao had been a bit more harsh on Isiri for bringing the beast back to Chrysalis like 4 or 5 episodes ago. But overall, it's still been fine.
There's still an opportunity to bring that up. You could have just been stewing on it, just waiting for the right moment to talk about it.
I feel like the moment to do that would have been, I think it was last episode when we were playing Blitzball and Tao and Isiri were chatting a bit afterwards.
True.
It's a hell of a day. They'll have time to let things settle later.
Okay.
I probably should have had Juice come back with the party after the World of the Lost so that there wasn't the whole scene with Aura that I was doing nothing for. That's about it.
For me, I think there was more I could have said at that first conversation between Terra and Smog, but whenever I play a game, the first 20 minutes I'm like brain dead. It's not until I like get back into the motion of it that I really know what I want my character to say. So I'm just like, this is a serious conversation and I am brain dead.
It was hard for me in that conversation too, because we probably both had an idea of what this type of conversation would be, and I'm sure we dashed each other's expectations throughout that.
Absolutely.
So it's constantly like, all right, where in the Smog decision tree am I?
The skill tree. There were a couple things that past Sammie would have brought up that Isiri would have wanted resolved, or at least addressed, if nothing else. It just didn't come to me at the time. All right, let's get into the resolution phase, the segment of the show where we each get to say something about the game with no responses. What is your final say on this session, Zach?
So we mentioned Tao's next playbook change might be coming up soon, and something we talked about this episode might be related to how that happens. So go back, listen again, look for the clues. You can find me at Zach Defense on Blue Sky.
And for you, Alex?
Obviously, we didn't get around to the thing I wanted to do Pony last time, so look forward to it next time. I hope. Please. You can find me on Blue Sky at Shining Crowbat. This week, I recommend Disenchantment. It is a Netflix American animated series created by Matt Groening, think Simpsons, Futurama. What I like about this as compared to some of the other series is that it is serial instead of episodic. And it has a lot of the same sort of humor, but dealing with fantasy tropes and then moving out into seeing how those collide with tropes in other genre fiction. So it might be interesting for other interstitial players. I'm not sure if this is the final season. I've got like a couple minutes left in the last episode of the season that just released. But it's been very nice and tying together all of this sprawling world building the other seasons have done.
And for myself, I just hope that Bay is salty, because if it is, a series going to sleep in it. That's what I really want to know. You can find me as a disembodied hand reaching out of your PC screen because you clicked on that suspicious link one too many times. This has been Resolve, an Afterplay show. You can find us online at most social media sites at Resolve AP.
Except Instagram, which is at Resolve Afterplay.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. You can buy the game we're playing, Interstitial, Our Hearts Intertwined, from its creator, Riley Hopkins, at linksmithgames.com.
All links will be included in the episode description.
Thank you again for listening. So we end our turn here, and now it's your turn. Tell us what's happening in your game.